is going to be done in Georgia. In Georgia, under the special ed regulations, you have something that's called the Special Instructional Assistants. And this is where they can come into the classroom and you have a support team, student support team. It's a group to discuss academic and behavioral problems of specific students. So now we have this team who can come in and do all screening on all children to see if they are, quote, becoming disabled. So all children will be screened. All children will be looked at as being, quote, at risk or becoming at risk. This is a state-funded program. In the beginning, it was K through 2, which provides additional funding in the regular classroom, that would also reduce class size. Sounded real good, didn't it? But through inclusion, it was a way for the federal government to access every individual in the classroom by having special ed students included in your regular classroom. So now these teams are going to be screening all children to be sure that they have met the outcomes. What this is called in Pennsylvania is called the Instructional Support Team, funded by the Department of Education and the Bureau of Special Education. It says specifically that they would at first access academic difficulty, but remember, academics is meeting the outcomes. So anyone not meeting specific outcomes within those subject areas will need intervention, and they will have access to instructional support. They will be assessed, and intervention procedures will be used. They will have the different components as collaborative consultation, the team building, curriculum-based assessment. This is where you're going to get a program. Say you're using the Here's Looking at You 2000 or the DARE program or something like that as a self-esteem improvement program. They will go to the back of the chapter of the self-esteem or peer development or collaboratives, take the last test, give it to the children, and determine if they are high or low or in between for meeting the outcomes in self-esteem. This is curriculum-based assessment. So directly within the classroom, they are using curriculum-based assessments to find at-risk children. When they assess, in particularly, for any student that's exhibiting behavioral affective problems, the team will identify inappropriate behaviors, and they will be allowed to do it in both academic and affective domain, and they will determine the degree of need. So you have a regular classroom teacher and a support teacher who is going to, quote, determine the degree of need of your child. Then when you go into the interventions, they are allowed to go into the regular classroom from least intensive to most restrictive, and they are able to identify, to build self-esteem, decision-making skills, social interaction, skills for identification or communication of feelings, and they will be allowed to go in and change the child's quote-unquote behavior. This is a list of at-risk children. They're shy. We had one child who was identified in instructional support team who was too happy. You can't be too happy. You are not in the right mode to meet the outcome. Identification of feelings, communicating, if you can't communicate what your feelings are, social interaction, aggressive, withdrawn, lost, decision-making skills. Life skills and life stressors are indicators of behavior. Examples are starting school, divorce, death, drugs, neglect, moving, retention, disease, dysfunctional family. Up here, I asked, gee, what if you have a dysfunctional teacher? We have them out there, right? We have dysfunctional everything, right? So what happens when you have a dysfunctional teacher? Give me a definition for what is dysfunctional family, please. Basically, if they're a clown, if you are not a little rock, and we decided, hey, soon kids can take their pet rocks to school and probably get funding for them in instructional support because they're not meeting an outcome. Anyway, to get money in order to bring it into the classroom, right? Anything is dysfunctional now. There is a new definition because there is no definition for normal. Everyone has a problem. Now this... idea is that if you do not meet, you know that little toy I used to have around before, where you had the little board with little pieces on the end, and you had the little pegs that would go through, and you have the hammer. That's what we're doing. You either fit into that peg or you don't. And if not, we'll get the hammer and we're going to force you through. And that's basically what we're talking about. This is from Colorado, and the key thing that I want to focus on for their special education systems change, which was just introduced, is that they call it a medical model. This is extremely important because the whole system of not meeting outcomes, behavioral outcomes, will be based on mental health. Understand that what we are talking about is the new therapeutic state of mental health.